Hi, welcome to musicmoose.org. I'm DJ James, and we're going to continue with guide tones. This is I think the third lesson. I've been harping at you on guide tones, but for good reason. Guide tones are really the most important thing you could possibly know as a guitarist. They're important for so many reasons. Last time we talked about comping a little bit. We dealt with the rhythm changes and how knowing your guide tones can help you comp with the rhythm changes and be a better accompanist to soloists and to other folks in your ensemble. Today I want to get into the first step of how guide tones can help you in your soloing, and this is just the most rudimentary ideas that you can play with guide tones, and in further lessons we'll expand on this a little bit more. But we've already dealt with guide tones, and if we go back to our rhythm changes, let's play our guide tones, or let's think about our guide tones throughout that entire progression. We start off, first of all, with either B flat and D or G and D. Either way, what we have going on with those, with that first chord, the B flat 6, is since we don't have a 7th, and remember I said the guide tones are your 3rd and 7th, since we don't have a 7th, you could think of it as 3rd and 6th or 3rd and root. Either way it works. And then for our next chord, we've got B flat, E flat, to the F7, A and E flat, back to B flat and D. Now, what I want to work with you on this lesson is the construction of what's called the guide tone line. And the guide tone line is your first step into being an excellent jazz guitar soloist. What it essentially does is it allows you to know exactly where you are in the tune at all times, and allows you to hear the changes and hear the changes melodically, as opposed to just hearing them all the times as your big chords like that. Now we're going to try to hear the changes a little bit more melodically. The thing to do with your guide tone line, and usually I'll transcribe it out on the staff paper, and if you take a look at the lesson here, I have some transcriptions of a guide tone line for the rhythm changes, of examples of a guide tone line for the rhythm changes that you can play through on your own. But we'll talk a little bit about constructing a guide tone line right now. The idea of a guide tone line is to create a melody that involves the 3rds and 7ths and only the 3rds and 7ths of each chord. It's something that every guitar teacher I've ever had has made me do, and it's a really, really good exercise. It's sort of like that rhythmic exercise that any good guitar teacher will make you do when you're in a lesson and he or she says, play a solo and play the entire solo only on one note, which forces you to be creative rhythmically. Well, this is sort of the same thing, a similar concept. All you have are 2 notes per chord, and the idea is to make some melodic sense out of them and make some harmonic sense out of them, and make some rhythmic sense out of them as well. We'll hold off on the rhythm for now and just try to make melodic sense and harmonic sense out of 2 notes per chord. So if we start out, just our 2-5-1, or in this sense a 1-2-5. There's our 1, the B flat 6, our 2 chord, C minor 7, and the 5, the F7. Where are our guide tones? B flat and D, B flat and E flat, A and E flat. So let's just get ourselves cycling those, comping a little bit. 1, 2, oh, hold on. 2, ba-dum, bum, bum, bum. Now let's play through those guide tones harmonically. Simple enough, but they start to give us a melody, and they start to give us a sense of what those chords sound like when they're being played melodically. Now we can expand it out farther into the progression. So let's start off here. We'll take it that far into the progression. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hopefully, just that melody, which are just made completely up of the 3rds and 7ths of the chords, with the exception of the B flat 6 where I'm playing the root instead, that melody should start to give you an idea of what the progression sounds like just by hearing things melodically. And ultimately, once we become good soloists, once we become improvisers, the idea is that through any melody that we hear, through any improvisation that we hear, we should be able to hear the chord progression. Not only because we know the chord progression, not only because we have some sort of sense of what should be behind the solo, but also because a good soloist will always refer not only to the melody of the song, which is another issue that I want to talk about at some point in a future lesson, but also continually refer to that harmonic sense. If we're playing the rhythm changes, it's very, very easy for a soloist, and I see it a lot of times happen, that a soloist playing over the rhythm changes just thinks B flat, and all we get is B flat major throughout the entire solo, and there's no sense of what the harmony is happening. The way to defeat that is by using your guide tones. If over that, everything that I'm playing is there's no harmonic sense. It just sounds like I'm noodling in B flat. Now, while I was playing that, I had the 2-5-1 progression in my head, but you couldn't hear it. And that's the idea. Instead, what we want to do by using our guide tones, and you can also do this by using arpeggios, but in order to expand our melodic concept, and what I want to do is link this back to our ideas of modes, which I talked about back in my first lesson, and the idea of the scale of the moment. Once we use our guide tones and start plugging in the scale of the moment around the guide tone, well, then we can construct solos and improvisations that make sense melodically and also give our listeners and give the rest of the band a good idea of what's happening harmonically in the tune. And that's, as guitarists, that's always what we're after. From musicmoose.org, this is DJ James.